Well, welcome. This is your first class, right?
Yeah.
Anybody decided they want to bail? Now's the time. First order of business is to pass this around. This is a roll sheet. It used to be when I first started teaching, I didn't take roll, and I certainly didn't take roll very seriously. And my thinking on that was, I should be offering you a good product. And if I wasn't making class worth coming, then you could make that decision for yourself as an adult. And then we'd see at the end of the semester whether that was a good decision, whether you could do well on my exam, in other words, without coming to class. I think, personally, that was a bad bet, but it was up to you. Well, a few years ago, the ABA decided to really crack down and make it clear that we have to have some means of verifying attendance under their rules. And so grudgingly, I now take roll. And I will check. And I will, if you are missing too much class, I will let you know, and we will talk about why that's happening. I think after orientation, our attendance policy. You can take absences, up to 3 absences from a class like this, and there's no, you don't send me a note, I don't need a doctor's note, you have absences. You use them as you need or see fit, and I will be keeping track and let you know when you are getting close to that, especially if you get close to that early in the semester, because I'm concerned. And if there's some problem going on or something that's keeping you from being in class, we need to sort of confront that right away. As I pass this around, if your name is not as you would like it to appear, either because you use a middle name or you have a shortened version of your name, as I do, for example, you call me Samuel. So I was going to say that my mother was mad at me. So if you'd like to go by some other name, just write it on the sheet, and I will fix it. If I've misspelled your name, fix that as well, and I'll fix that. But otherwise, just initial where your name is to the right of your name. And so you will be on the back of the page, and you will be in front. Okay? Any questions about the roll sheet? Okay. As that goes around. Eventually, I will have a seating chart. I did not get one before today's class. That will help me enormously. We'll pass that around on Wednesday, I'm sure. That will help me enormously in getting to know your names. I am horrendous at learning names and putting them with faces. But I gradually will learn you. The more you participate, the quicker I will know who you are. And I will eventually get it, but a seating chart helps me a lot. So where you are, and certainly where you are Wednesday, is where you shall remain for the semester. Once you're on the seating chart, obviously if there's a free seat, if you want to change seats, come see me, so you can get on the seating chart in the right place, and I can call you by the right name when I either call on you or you raise your hand and volunteer. All right, but there's no seating chart for today, so you get a free day to sort of scout out the seat that makes you most comfortable. All right, but we'll deal with that. All right, you should have basically 2 things, maybe 3 depending on the way you look at it. You should have in some form these Kentucky excerpts, Kentucky statutory excerpts from our criminal code. You may have it electronically. It's on Blackboard, and it has been for a while, and you can just look at it on your laptops in class as you need it and read it from Blackboard, or if you've downloaded it onto your hard drive, that's fine, and refer to it as we need to discuss it in class. Or you can print it out. Sometime during the semester, I strongly suggest that you print it out. And the reason for that is you can bring it to the final with you, but only you won't have access to it on your laptops at the final, because the program that we use, the software that we use that allows you to type your exams, shuts off your access to everything else on your computer. So at some point, whenever it's convenient for you, you should print these excerpts out, because you'll want them during the final exam. Then also, you should have this case book, Kaplan, Weisberg, and Binder, Criminal Law Cases and Materials, 8th edition. And you do need the most recent, up-to-date edition. Cases that you will read will not appear in other editions, prior editions. And all the pages are different. Some of the notes are different. So you will need this edition. And again, it's something you will be able to bring with you to the final exam, and And so you want the most recent edition, and obviously you want the casebook in order to be able to read along throughout the semester. You should also have the syllabus, okay? Again, electronic is fine, printed out is fine, but you'll need the syllabus. A, we're going to talk about it today, and B, you're going to need it to follow along with the cases and the reading throughout the semester. So you'll know what cases are on for a particular day, and so you will be prepared and not fall behind. So with that in mind, pull out your syllabi or take a look at them on your laptop so we can talk about them. Before we do that, any questions so far? Anything on your minds? Actually, before we do that, I'll just ask, what have you heard about this class from second years, third years, former students you may know? What have you heard about this class that either has you excited or has you trembling? You are? Caitlin, last name?
Walls.
Okay, Walls.
Yeah.
Walls. What have you heard? Now, what did I ask? What did I ask about this class?
Yes.
And you went right to the final exam. Right to the final exam, okay? That the final is really hard. Is that it? Okay? There was another hand over here?
That's what I was going to say.
That's what you were going to say. Is anybody going to say anything about the class? Or is everyone fixated already? It's August 13th, and you're already fixated on the final. Wow.
I've heard that the class can be very intimidating, but that you learn a lot.
Very intimidating. I'm about, on a good day, I'm 5'7". Okay? I am the least intimidating person you will ever meet, right?
Keyword good day, though.
I'm sorry?
But the keyword there is good day.
On a good day. Watch it now. Right? On a bad day, I'm 5'6", so even less. Right? Not intimidating at all. Now, we'll talk about the final in a minute. Anything else? I'm going to save the final for last. Yeah.
I heard you had a straightforward teaching style.
A straightforward teaching style? I think that's fair, yeah.
I heard you have a word of the day that you get a prize if you say the word that you want us
That
to
is
say.
true. That is true. And it's another incentive to keep up with the reading because the word will have something to do with the reading for that day. So we'll talk about that. As soon as somebody says the word of the day, we'll sort of explain that. That's why you have that envelope. What does that envelope say on it?
Word of the day.
Word of the day. Right? All right. Anything else? All right. Yeah.
That you ask questions that seem like they're like out of left field, but then you like relate them back to.
Out of left field, and welcome to law school. That's what we do, right? We try to connect things, right? Because one of the skills you're going to need as a lawyer is when a client comes into your office or a partner comes into your office asking a question out of left field, you're going to have to be able to figure out, well, where do I even begin? How does that relate to law I know, or where do I research to find the law I don't know? Right? So lots of your questions that you'll have to answer throughout your career are going to come out of left field, right? And that's what I'll try to prepare you for. And you'll figure out, hopefully by the end of that class, or maybe by the end of that unit, how it all fits together and why I asked that question. And one of the things you should sort of look at in your own head is, am I getting better at that? Am I getting better at anticipating what his, or for that matter, your other professors' questions may be? Because at the beginning, it's going to feel overwhelming. I didn't see that in the reading. How did he come up with that? I didn't think that's what we were going to talk about. Don't panic. You will gradually get better at that and spotting the things in the reading that might come up in that day's discussion. Okay? So give yourself a break. Give yourself some time to develop that skill. All right, let's talk about the final exam. I will make you a deal. Actually, I have no choice but to accept the deal, but it's still a deal. Okay? The deal is this. I will write and give you a challenging exam. Okay? That is true. If you've heard that the exam is challenging, that it's tough, I'm not going to deny that. That's what I do. But I do that knowing that I'm giving you a challenging exam, and I'll tell you the reasons for it in a minute. And I want you to trust me that I know I'm giving you a challenging exam, and the deal is I will grade it with that in mind, with reasonable expectations of what you can do on a challenging exam, okay? That, I will not expect you to be able to see everything, to write perfectly, because it's a timed exam situation where you can't really edit yourself, right? I will grade it knowing what is reasonable for an exam that is meant to be challenging and not meant to be simple and easy, okay? So that you'll get that sort of fair treatment. That's the deal I'm making with you as the balance for giving you an exam that's challenging. Now, why do I give a challenging exam instead of just making it, to use the word we've heard before, straightforward? Well, I think there are 3 opportunities that you have to learn the material in any class, but this class especially. One is obviously during class and during this semester, when you're reading the material, we discuss the material, etc. That's one opportunity. The second opportunity is when you study, when you're studying for the final, and then the third is when you're actually taking the final. In 2 of those 3 times, it is to the advantage of you learning the material that I make the exam challenging. If you know the exam is going to be tough, then you will study that much harder. I don't mean it out of fear, but okay, maybe it's out of fear. But out of expectation that, boy, I have to study hard if I'm going to do well on this test, right? So you'll study harder and learn it more. And then when you're actually taking the final, I think you learn more from a challenging final that asks you to see the connections, that asks you to make good arguments in support of a position, etc. And so if you're going to learn the material, if I'm going to take advantage of those very limited opportunities that I have to help you learn the material, giving you a challenging final is the way to go. So that's what you can expect. And I think you learn best from that and will come out of the class knowing criminal law that much better, okay? But I know I'm doing that, and so I owe you taking that into account when I grade it. And it has been, I can't tell you how many years it's been since anyone failed my criminal law exam. It's been forever, okay? And people do very well. This school has as you probably have heard, a recommended but not mandatory B curve. Every year in criminal law, I have had no trouble hitting that, so that there has been a B curve in this class, and it's because students have done well. So as much as you may have heard, whatever you may have heard that has you nervous or intimidated, the exam, which we'll talk about a lot more as the semester goes along, at least in terms of how it might affect your GPA, etc., you will do fine. And I hope you will learn the material as we go along. Okay? Any other questions about that? Okay? All right. We'll talk a little bit more about that when we get to grading on the syllabus. All right. You will see on the syllabus that we will be covering, we will be covering 7 different units. 7 different units. The first is just an introduction, so it's pretty short. It'll be just this week. Introduction to the course and the nature of criminal punishment. And then we get into the meat of the material. We'll be talking about mens rea and actus reus, the elements of just punishment, and that will take us into the early part of September. Then we will talk about harm. How does harm fit into the calculation of defining criminality, assessing the seriousness of criminal punishment? Did the person do harm with the action they took that is being penalized or that the state seeks to punish? And you will see that there are 2 subunits there. Causation, did the person cause harm? Causation. And attempt, because attempt, if you think about it, is really a situation in which somebody tried to do harm but may not have done the harm they sought to achieve through their criminal activity. So we'll study attempt. Then we'll get into 2 specific offenses by way of understanding how criminal offenses are defined and how the law seeks to achieve its purposes. And we'll use these as examples to stand in for other crimes under the criminal code. We'll look at sexual rape and sexual assault, and we'll look at homicide. And by understanding those two crimes, hopefully, you'll be able to then see, okay, how would I go about also assessing theft offenses or assault offenses, etc. And we don't have time to cover every offense, so we use these two because they're important crimes and because they help illustrate the way criminal codes work. And then we'll look at two other specific topics in the criminal law. One is group criminality and how the law treats that, whether it be complicity or conspiracy. And finally, exculpation, where you're talking about somebody having a justification or something like self-defense that would excuse conduct that would otherwise be criminal. And that will take us through the end of November, and we will be all done and ready for the final. The student learning outcomes on the syllabus, I hope, are self-explanatory. I want you to be able to understand the justifications for punishment. That is why we punish, why a society has a criminal code, and then be able to make arguments from those justifications about whether a specific action, a specific policy would or would not serve those purposes. And we will begin that exercise when we talk about the hypo that's on the syllabus later this week, the Burns hypo. I want you to understand mens rea and actus reus. These are elements that all criminal offenses have in common, and how the concepts help to serve the purposes of the criminal justice system. We will recognize and explain how legislatures define crimes by looking at particular offenses. As I said, we will look specifically at homicide and rape, and particularly look at their treatment under the KRS. And finally, look at, understand within the context of a criminal case, how we use facts, how lawyers use facts to develop persuasive arguments, either that a crime has been established or that a crime has not been established beyond a reasonable doubt, depending on whether you are on the defense or the prosecution side. Throughout the semester, one of the things I hope you will see as a common running thread is that I try to put you in the position of a lawyer on these cases. How would you argue this to the jury if you were the prosecutor? How would you argue it if you were the defense? Right? How the argument, although we'll be dealing with legal issues when these cases go up on appeal, I want you to sort of be able to think backwards. When this case was first brought, how was it argued to the jury? What facts would I have utilized to argue that this person should be convicted? And because I want this to be a course in which you have to begin your journey to thinking like a practicing lawyer, in this case, a lawyer who's practicing criminal law. Okay? So look for that. When you're reading the cases, think about not just the legal issue that's raised that the court is dealing with, but how this case would have been tried and how you would have tried it on one side or the other. As far as the grade goes, we've already talked a little bit about the exam. The exam will have 10 multiple choice questions that will count for 10% of the grade, and the rest will be essay. But essay I put in quotes, because the one thing I can promise you is that you will never, ever have an essay question from me. You will never have to write an essay. When I give you an essay question, you will have to write something lawyers actually write. Lawyers, in my experience, never write essays, okay? They write briefs, they write memos, they write client letters, they write closing arguments to juries. If they're judges, they write judicial opinions. They write all sorts of wonderful things, but they don't write essays. So you will not write an essay on my exam. I will ask you to write something a lawyer writes, and then we will talk throughout the semester as we get closer to the exam about how I will want you to write various different kinds of documents. But as you're reading the cases, one thing to keep in mind is look at how the judges are writing judicial opinions. Because if I ask you to write a judicial opinion resolving a situation, You want to write it like you think some of the better written opinions were written. So that's one of your first sort of clues as to at least one of those kinds of documents, right? So I will not ask you to write essays. That is a promise. I haven't done that. I've been teaching 23 years now. I probably haven't written an exam that asks for an essay in the last 20. So that's pretty big. Okay? It is, as I said, a limited open book exam. You can bring your notes. You can bring your outlines as long as you participated in creating them. It can't be anything that was commercially prepared. So if you have a commercial study aid, if you have the Dressler Understanding book to help you through, don't incorporate anything like that into your notes. At least not notes you intend to bring to the exam. But if you're in a study group or form a study group and you make a joint outline, you can all bring that outline as long as it was student prepared by students in this class. Okay? And then you can bring your KRS excerpts and you can bring your casebook. I give an open book exam because, again, how do lawyers practice? When a problem comes to them, when some client walks in their office or a file is dropped on their desk saying, and the assistant Commonwealth's attorney is asked, what charges should we bring against this group of potential defendants? One way in which lawyers don't operate is to then say, okay, I'm going to wall myself off in a room, give myself no access to any legal materials, and try to answer the question. Lawyers look at the case books, they look at the law, they look at precedent, and I'll want to replicate that as much as we can in an exam setting. What lawyers actually do. You'll use these materials to show that you can make arguments in support of a position I ask you to argue for. Okay? So that's why we do an open book exam. And that's how most of your grade will be calculated. Okay? It will also include a class participation component. Okay? I value class discussion. I do not want class to be the way it is so far today, which is a lot of me talking. I want you to talk to me. I want you to answer my questions. I want you to talk to each other. I want you to answer each other and have a good discussion amongst yourselves. And in order to encourage that, I give a bonus for class participation. And here's what will happen. After class today, I will start a list that will say August 13th and 15th. And I will put names on it, okay? And all the names of people who participate today will go on this list. And then I will have a list for this week. All you have to do is participate one time. Answer a question, ask a question, respond to what somebody else said. Just participate in class conversation one time, and you get credit for that week. And then I will have, since it's a 14-week course, I'll have 14 lists. I'll then have a list for August 20th to the 22nd. You get the idea. And you want to be on as many of those lists as you can. Because you can, if you get a score of 14, essentially you'll have a perfect score, and you'll get the most possible participation you can get for credit towards participation. And your grade can be raised up to half a grade, okay? So you can go from an A- to an A, C+ to a B-, whatever it happens to be. And usually, depending on how participation goes and how the class divides up when it comes to participation, between a quarter and a third of the class will get the participation credit. And I draw the line wherever there's a clear, and there's always a clear division at some point. It might be at 9 or 10 weeks, but there will be a clear division. And that's where I'll be able to say, aha, that's where I can draw the line. And of the 66 of you, I believe there are 66 of you, maybe 20 will get the credit. And then from that mark to the next will be a big gap. And that's where I'll make the call. Okay? So that's how, and you can, whatever you would get on the exam, it would go up that half a grade because of participation. Everyone clear on how I do this? Sometimes it causes confusion. People are not sure. And if you want to come and ask me, don't come and ask me in the first 2 or 3 weeks. Because I'll be like, there's no separation. But after, halfway through the semester, if you want to come and ask me where you stand, are you doing okay with participation? Are you setting a pace that would get you to the bump? then I'll be happy to answer that question. Okay? So that's that. Most of the time I take volunteers. When I ask a question, see if hands go up. Occasionally I will also call on people. And if you are repeatedly unprepared when I call on you, I have never had to exercise this. In 23 years of teaching, I have never had to actually lower a grade because of unpreparedness. So I'm confident you will not be the first class. But just in case, you can have your grade lowered if you are repeatedly unprepared. Okay? Questions about grading or anything else that's on your mind before we get underway? Oh, my office hours. My office hours are from 2 to 4 today and Wednesday. That is the days this class meets. And Thursdays from 9:30 to 11:30. I will do everything I can to be in my office during those times, right? Unfortunately, today is an example of how sometimes something gets in the way. The dean has asked a meeting of a committee that he needs to see at 3 o'clock today, and you don't say no to the dean. And so I will be out of my office from 3 to 4, but I will be in my office from 4 to 5 to make up for it. Okay, I will try to let you know if there are specific times that I'm going to miss office hours for something like that, and then how I will make it up. Okay? As I said at orientation, if you want to come by during my office hours, those are guaranteed to be yours. I will be available to you during those office hours. Now, obviously, if I'm already meeting with a student or students, you may give me a little bit of a line, but usually you can see me right away. And other times, I also want to see you. I just can't promise I'll be there. I might have a meeting, I might have a conference call, whatever. But I want to see you. My door is open, even if it's not office hours, come by. Do not be shy. Be that student who is always asking questions, who is always making sure they're on top of things. That's what I want. I want to see you. I would not be teaching, I would not have been teaching this long if I didn't want to see you, to talk to you, to get to know you, to help you get to where you want to go and succeed in this class. So the best students, the ones who have the most success, are the ones who are always afraid in their own head that they're making a pest of themselves. But you're not. You are doing what I want you to do to help you succeed. So be in my office. Don't worry about office hours. We do that because I'm required to do that to make sure you know when I will definitely be available, but even during non-office hours, I want to see you. Yeah.
So you talk about class assignments helping improve.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Can you just talk about that a little bit? So
Sure.
if you're close to like maybe a little bit below that cutoff line on the list, and you do
Right.
well on the assignments.
Absolutely. The first one actually will be very soon. Will be by the end of the week. You will have the first one, and there will be 3, maybe 4 assignments sprinkled throughout the semester that you will be able to complete. They're not required, so that they can help move you up the list. Right? They basically will count for a whole extra week. So if you participated in 8, and there's a good chance 8 would leave you short. But you do 3 assignments. Now you're at 11. And that 11 is almost certainly not going to leave you short. So that's how it can make a big difference. The more important value, at least to me, of the assignments is you will get feedback on them. And I will be able to tell you where you stand, what you did well, where you can improve, and that will give you an assessment of how you can move forward in the course. And then you can come talk to me about the comments, and we can have a dialogue that will help you to get ready for that final. And to just make sure you know the material, right? Some of them will be written assignments. Some of them will be exercises, for lack of a better word. But they will all be valuable for the feedback you get and potentially helping you get class participation credit to bump your grade. Okay, as I said, the first one you'll get by the end of this week, so we'll dive right in with that. Okay, anything else? Yeah.
I have a question. If you have basically, because I used to teach and I know a lot of times that the same people will put their hands up,
Yeah.
but if you see somebody new trying to participate, will you try to give them the opportunity?
I will try very hard.
Okay.
I very much want to bring other voices into the conversation, not just because of the whole participation thing, but because I want a diverse set of voices contributing ideas, perspectives to the material and to our discussion of the material. What happens, and I think it is, social psychologists will tell you this is very common. Your eye tends to go where you're used to it going, and so once a pattern is established among which of you tends to be talkative, have a contribution to make, etc., it just becomes a habit to look to that eye. So what a lot of times will happen is I will see that the person I've heard from fairly frequently, and this usually is developed by the middle of the semester, who I've heard from fairly frequently, and then I'll point to that person, and then out of the corner of my eye, just when it's too late, I'll see the person I haven't heard from. Dang it. And what I'll do is I'll try to call on that person as a follow-up and bring them into the conversation. But I am very aware of the importance of, and I place a lot of importance on, all of you having the opportunity, because A, it's important to make this class all that it can be, and B, it's going to be important for you as a lawyer. You don't want to be intimidated and nervous about having your voice heard, because your client needs you to have your voice heard in one way or another. So I don't want you to be intimidated by me, by the fact that I might ask you a follow-up, by the fact that your classmates may react in a certain way, and I certainly don't want you to be intimidated, most important of all, by the possibility that you might, oh no, get it wrong. Okay? Two things I want to say about that. First, so what? You're learning, you're students, you're allowed to get things wrong. Okay? You're allowed to sort of go down a wrong path and let us as a group all correct it, right? In the spirit of all learning together, right? So don't worry about being wrong, because I fully expect it. I fully expect that there will be days in which we have to sort of gently course correct because the conversation goes down a certain path, and I let it because I want to explore that idea and then maybe say, well, no, maybe that's not the way attempt works. Or maybe we need to think differently about the difference between murder and manslaughter, whatever the topic happens to be. The second thing about, quote unquote, being wrong is you guys are much harder on yourselves. I guarantee you will be much harder on yourselves than I am in terms of assessing how you did when you speak up in class. I cannot tell you how many thousands of times over the years I have had students come to my office either upset or worse, or apologetic about how badly they did, about how they just screwed up, they were an incoherent, rambling mess, whatever. And I'm like, you were great, right? You were fine. But you judge yourselves on such a harsh standard, and I'm like, you said everything I needed you to say, you answered the questions, you were engaging. Don't be so hard on yourselves. You will be, if you're like every other class I've ever had, you will be a much tougher critic on your own performance than I am. Because I will think you did just fine. And if you want me to confirm that, I will. I try to do it in class and tell you, very nice, well done, good answer. But a lot of times you guys don't hear it. What you guys hear is the one misstep where you think, oh, you should have said that differently. Right? So hear the good. Try your best to hear the positive, because being hard on yourself law school can be challenging enough. Being hard on yourself as you go through it just makes it harder. There's no reason for that, okay? You will be a terrific class. I promise you. You will lift each other up, and you will be a terrific class.
I was just gonna add, I learned in my psychology classes, it's actually better to go ahead and be wrong anyway, because those are the answers you're gonna remember better on the test. Because you're gonna remember being wrong and being corrected.
But as long as you then remember that it was a wrong answer.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely, right? You remember by articulating something, right? That is part of how you reinforce your understanding of it, right? And verbalizing a legal premise, a legal argument is one way to show yourself and to reinforce it in your memory what you know. So there is no educational reason to be shy, and there is a lot of reason to force yourself if you need to. I will give you a little secret, and I shouldn't tell you this secret because now a bunch of you are going to try to take advantage of it, and I won't be able to accommodate everyone who wants to. One thing that I have done in the past to get people who have been reluctant to speak up in class, and people come to me every year, and they're like, I really wanted to volunteer for that, but I was just too nervous. I was afraid I would screw it up, and I just couldn't bring myself to raise my hand. I hear that all the time. And what I tell those people sometimes, especially if we've gone over a couple of other strategies to try to get them to get over the hump, is I say, look, email me before class, next class, either the night before, that morning, and tell me which case you have prepared especially to do. You know backwards and forwards, and you have the most confidence in. And I'll call on you for that case. So you will know what is in store. You won't have to take the initiative to volunteer. I'll call on you and put you on the spot, but put you on the spot in a way that is prearranged, that you have a comfort zone, and that you feel prepared for. And then that person sort of gets the ability to sort of realize, oh, I can do this. Participating in class is no big deal, and they realize that they are actually very capable. And so I'll tell you this right now. If that, first try to, get the idea of volunteering one you're comfortable with, without making it a prearranged thing. But if that doesn't work, and if you can't work through the issues you have with it, come talk to me. And if we have to arrange that kind of thing, we'll do that. We'll do everything we have. I'll try every trick in the book to make sure that this class is the kind of experience that is a positive one, even if it ends up being a challenge. Okay, those two don't have to be mutually exclusive. Okay, anything else? All right. Can't give these dates anymore. When you take some of your other courses, and I can't give you any examples because you haven't started any of those courses yet, you will find that we're going to do things a little bit different. You might even say sideways compared to those courses, right? We won't, as you can see from the syllabus, we won't be doing, each crime one at a time and make that the whole approach to teaching criminal law. It won't be, homicide, theft, arson, right? We won't be doing that. What instead we'll be doing is understanding what forms a crime by looking at concepts that form crimes, right? And we'll be asking two initial questions. Why do we label some conduct criminal? Okay, that's question one. And the second question is, what categories of elements are common to all criminal definitions? Somebody tell me how you would define murder. Somebody tell me. And you are?
Philip.
Last name?
Smith.
Mr. Smith. Easy last name. I like easy names. And as far as, by the way, Smith is easy. If your name is not easy to pronounce, correct me if I get it wrong. Do not be shy about correcting me, right? I went through all of law school with a name like Marcuson, with my professors pronouncing it a zillion different ways. One of whom was one of my favorite professors, civil procedure professor, my first semester of law school, who they went the entire semester pronouncing my name Marcossin, which is wrong, but I would not correct him. I was like, my professor, however he pronounces my name, it's right. And it drove my classmates crazy. One of whom, in particular, finally corrected him in the middle of a class discussion, because I was going back and forth with this guy who had a name like Smith. His was Davis, right? And he finally, I said, Mr. Davis is wrong, and he said, and he looked at me and he said, Mr. Marcusson is wrong, and looked straight at the professor, and I'm mortified. And Professor Fisk looks at me and he says, he had this really serious New York accent. So have I been pronouncing your name wrong this whole semester? And I was like, I wanted to kill this guy, Ralph Davis. I was like, well, yeah, it's Marcusson. And the professor just shook his head. Like, students, oh my God. So if I'm pronouncing your name wrong, let me know. I want to get it right, right? And if you have to do it twice, remind me twice. I will not be mad at you. I will not object. I will not hold it against you. I will be grateful to you. Okay? Now, Mr. Smith, how would you define murder?
There is someone who is dead.
I'm sorry?
There is someone who is dead.
There's someone who's dead. This is the Smith murder. And the Gravediggers Union is very happy to hear it, because they want to have a job, right? Before you all try to tell Mr. Smith why that's, well, let me ask you. Somebody tell Mr. Smith or tell me why that's probably not a sufficient definition of murder, and you are?
Kelsey Cole.
I'm sorry?
Kelsey Cole.
Call.
Yes.
Call. Call. Why is that a problem?
Some people die of natural causes.
Some people die of natural causes. Well, let's say Mr. Smith can correct that deficiency, and he says, okay, somebody dies at another's hand. Someone is dead at another's hand. Okay, so we've eliminated natural causes. Okay, so lots of hands, and you are?
Johnson is my last name, Johnson.
Mr. Johnson.
Yes, sir.
Easy names, yes.
Yeah.
Mr. Johnson.
I believe someone's dead at another's hand, but it could have been an accident, so I think murders should have an intent to kill someone.
Dead at another's hand, and we have Johnson saying accidents. So how are we going to throw this intent into the mix?
So someone has to purposely kill another.
So we want to put this person perhaps at the start of the definition, because
Okay.
we're defining their act of murder rather than the dead person,
Yes,
right?
sir.
So someone, what does someone do?
Purpose, intentionally kill another person.
Intentionally kills a person. Now we're getting somewhere. Anybody have any problems with that? Let's see, you are
Elizabeth Clements.
Clement? Clements, with an S.
Yes.
Okay, it's Clements.
Like someone who's guilty of a DUI who hits and kills someone. They weren't intentionally trying to kill that person, but their acts led to their death.
And
they're responsible for it.
And so?
So I would say someone who is responsible for the death of another human being, lacking.
With giving the example of a DUI, why does Johnson's definition perhaps work better for what we're trying to do? And you are?
Mr. Cannon.
What was his name?
Cannon.
Cannon.
Yeah. Actually, I was gonna say that it's someone that intentionally kills a person that's not in self-defense.
Not in self-defense.
Good one.
So we got DUI, self-defense, any other instances we can think of that might cause us to have some issues. And you are?
Rangaswamy is my last name.
Rangaswamy.
Rangaswamy. I may have to work on that one, but I got it right now.
Yeah.
Rangaswamy. Ms. Rangaswamy,